Hey everyone, so in this video I want to talk about the T-share rate ratcheting up at the end of your hex stakes, at the end of the perpetual stakes. We just saw base end a few weeks ago and the second period of base start, and kind of hidden in that stop and restart was a T-share rate ratchet up, and that's something I haven't added to the site yet for Looking to Maxi. I haven't taken into account the T-share rate ratcheting up effect at all, and that's something I definitely want to add. Right now we have discounts, we have cost per T-share, etc. But actually, it's been something I've been thinking about adding because I think it does have a massive effect. And if you haven't already, definitely check out this video on RH Max's channel. He interviews the founder of the Maxi tokens, and they talk about how cheap the cost per T-share was on Deci, eDeci, a couple of weeks ago. Now that we're up, the Deci price and the hex price is up, but at one point it was around $22 for a T-share, and Dipcatcher basically says that it's actually even better than that because it's a 10-year T-share. You have 9 years left at a really good T-share rate. So what does that all mean? Like, I've started to dig into the numbers, and honestly, digging into the perpetuals has been like an eye-opener in terms of like how the hex contract works as well, and it's just made me like even more bullish. Like, every layer that's added to these perpetuals and to hex just makes me even more bullish. So the idea, and I guess I can show you hexfire.io. Shout out to Crispy Man for putting this site together. Probably one of the best sites on hex and hex data out there. But basically, he has this chart of the hex T-share rate, and if you don't know, in hex, every time, not every day, but when there's to ensure that like long stakes accrue more yield than starting and ending stakes over and over again, there's something in the hex contract called the hex share rate, and it ratchets up every time it checks the daily stakes which are ending. If there's one, I need to look into it in a bit more detail, but in terms of how it actually works. But it doesn't always ratchet up. It decides if it ratchets up based on all the stakes which are ending in a particular day, and if a stake could, based on the one which I think is the highest yield, or there's criteria there for if it ratchets up and by how much, but it makes sure that you cannot get more hex by constantly starting and stopping stakes on a weekly basis or daily basis versus going long term. So that's a pretty innovative, one of the most innovative things inside the hex contract itself. If you want to learn more about that, I think Hex Fire Crispy Man has videos on that, and then also Dev Kyle, he explains it quite well. But essentially, you have this constant, or this variable, sorry, which is increasing every day or so, right? Not necessarily every day, but every day or so. We've experienced this red line so far, and then the blue line we can kind of project out, and that's what this site is doing. It's projecting out what the T-share rate will be in the next couple of years based on the current stakes which are live, right? We can kind of calculate by how much the T-share rate will ratchet up based on what's currently live. Now, this could increase. So this is kind of, I think, conservative, because it could be much higher than this just based on if there's a bunch of new whales that come in and start staking, right? So anyway, this is a projection. It's not gospel. Just take that into consideration. But this is the T-share rate increasing. And whenever you start and stop a stake, it means that you get a worse rate. You have to pay more hex to get the same number of T-shares. And so your kind of effective APY goes down a bit. And so if I show you the backing charts, which give you a bit of an overview of how hex stakes kind of progress over time. So yeah, if we just take these charts, if you just imagine Lucky, because it's steep enough for it to be noticeable, but it's going up at this incline, because the T-share rate would ratchet up at the end of the stake, it would continue going up, but maybe at a less steep incline, right? So it wouldn't continue on this line that you see here. It would continue increasing, but at a less steep incline, just because of that T-share rate ratchet up. And it's interesting to think about the T-share rate ratcheting up, because if you get a longer stake, obviously you maintain the gradient of your yield and you maintain the APY basically. So if you're holding base or a shorter perpetual, you can redeem earlier, sure, but when the stake restarts, this gradient is going to be lower, right? Now, it might not be a lower APY. It could just be that the effective APY of the longer stakes increases, and that's kind of what we've been seeing in hex terms, like Maxi and Deci. They've kind of slowly been going up. So instead of a 30% APY, you might average out over the whole length of the stake to a 40, 50 or more percent APY, and then base is just constantly at a 10 to 12% APY. That could also be a scenario. Or we could see like a real decline in the APY of base to 5%, 4%, whatever, like who knows. But there will be a difference between the longer stakes and the shorter stakes, and it will be exacerbated over the years as we go on. The difference will become very noticeable. So that's just a really interesting thing to think about. So this $22 T-share, it's actually a bigger deal than most people think it is, because the T-share rate is ratcheting up so high. T-shares themselves are going to become quite scarce. So there's another chart on hexfire.io which shows the total T-shares, and you can see that the supply of T-shares is going down quite strongly here. And there's other analysis that Hexfire has done into kind of the requirements to be, a squid, a dolphin, a shark, etc. And by the 10-year mark, you're looking at like the requirement for some of these leagues dropping by 50%, which is quite considerable, right? So if you have T-shares, the ability to take those T-shares on, like the ability to get those T-shares with Hex is going to go down by about 50% in the next 10 years, which is kind of crazy. So I have Hex daily stats, hexstats.today open as well, just to show you the T-share price for, I think this is a 1-day stake without any bonuses. But yeah, if you look at that compared to the T-share price on the perpetuals, you can kind of see, they're just way lower because they have bonuses added as well. But the thing that I realized from watching this video as well is that the cost per T-share isn't that important. Like, you need to really also just look at the length of the stake. So that's something that I'm going to be adding to the site at some point, like T-share days, or cost per T-share days. Like, how much does a T-share cost to hold per day that you hold it? Just to do that, to be able to compare all of them together, you kind of need to take into account the T-share rate ratcheting, because you kind of want to compare base over its entire 15 years, including the ratchet up of the T-share rate, so that you can compare that like really side by side with Maxi. If you're comparing 1 year to Maxi, it doesn't really make sense, because you're still going to be earning yield for the last 14 years. It's not like your T-shares just disappear. it's just going to be at a lower APY every time it restakes. So what led me down this rabbit hole to look into all of the kind of events which are coming up in the next 15 years for the perpetuals and maxi, and still need to finalize this data, but basically looking at all of the restake periods for base. There's just like a lot, obviously, but visualizing it is pretty cool. And then seeing kind of lucky period 2 end. But yeah, I want to make some projections just based on the base period 1 ending. The long and short of it, which is quite interesting, is that there seems to be around a 9% loss in TShares that base will experience every year. And so if I just go down here and just show base only, you can see that that represents around, in period 2, you're going to get around 0.9%, 0.9 TShares. If you had 1 TShare before, now you have 0.9, and it kind of continues to go down as the years roll over. So by the end of kind of when maxi comes out and the stake is redeemed on maxi, you're going to have 74% less TShares in base, roughly, right? It's all projections, and I kind of feel okay using 9% as a projection because it's conservative. Because if you look at the chart on Hexfire, it's kind of trending upwards in terms of the TShare rate ratchet, so it could get worse than this. And then just bear in mind, when you hold a longer stake like Deci or Maxi, you're getting cheaper TShares, but you're also keeping those TShares for longer. On base, and some of the short, all of them have this effect, but the effect is more prominent on the shorter rolling stakes. So yeah, definitely really interesting. Still need to confirm these. I probably need to get a few stats from Crispy Man on the TShare rate he projects for each of these dates, but pretty excited to release these soon on lookintomaxi.com, just so that we can properly compare all of the tokens to one another, because cost per TShare isn't, it's not the best. It's actually better, the cost of Deci, for example. Okay, I'll leave it there, but it's kind of a work in progress for now, and speak soon.